guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about Instagram poetry. So Instagram poetry is pretty well known for not being the greatest form of art. A lot of people have made videos about it and a lot of people don't really love it. But Instagram poetry is very successful. A lot of the poets have thousands of followers on Instagram, hundreds of thousands, and a lot of them even sell their poetry books and presumably make money off of it. So I want to read a couple, look at them, and give some criticisms that I want to be constructive. I'm not here to just like shit on people, but I will joke about it. So if I make fun of them, then like that's on me. I'm bored and I have nothing better to do, but I am going to try to provide like actual criticism that can hopefully be helpful to any of the writers who are subscribed to me. I know that a couple are after my Gabby Hanna video. I took a class in college where I had to learn how to criticize literature, including poetry, so I'm not super qualified to do this, but I am a little bit qualified. I want to say before I start that it isn't a bad thing to like Instagram poetry. I'm not trying to make fun of anybody who enjoys Instagram poetry. If something speaks to you, then it's art, and it doesn't matter if it's bad or if I think it's bad. Like, who gives a shit what I think? It's art. I'm going to start with this one, which I think really encapsulates the energy of Instagram poets. Trust in vibes, not words. I understand. When I read this, I imagine someone like at the altar. Whole family is there. There's a priest, and he's doing whatever priests do. I'm not Catholic. And you're looking your spouse in the eyes and the vibes are off. So you gotta leave. This will stay between us, heart whispered, after mind had gone to sleep. Something that I've noticed in a lot of Instagram poetry is that they introduce a metaphor or an allegory that is actually very interesting, but they just don't really do anything with it, like this one. It's interesting, I think it could be really cool. But it's just like you introduce this allegory and then you just spell it out for the reader. So it doesn't take any thought. You're not letting the reader think about it. A lot of Instagram poetry just kind of tells you something and it doesn't leave you any room to think about it. The stars are sleeping in our palms tonight. To them, our love feels like home. Again, this is by the same writer as the last one. I think that the first two lines are actually very pretty. I actually really like them. It doesn't feel personal. There's no personality behind this, and so it's just kind of bland, I feel. Even though it's very well written, and even though the first two, the stars are sleeping in our palms tonight, I think that's really beautiful and very, I don't know, I really like that. But it's just, it doesn't really go anywhere. So I have a bunch of poems from the same writer, and I feel like I should do them all at once, so I'll do them now. And I forgot to say, this poet's name is Atticus, and he has like 1.5 million followers or something. I don't know, I'll look it up after. Life is the art of pretending to be normal. Because you're weird. I'm a weirdo. Some of his really remind me of like quote Tumblr. It was like this era in 2014-ish, whenever people would just take static pictures and put a quote in front of it. And, you know, I'm not like other girls, and it's a picture of like some girl reading or something. Normal people scare me. This is not an original sentiment, and this sentiment has been clowned. Also, there's no originality. I feel like that is a criticism that I have for a lot of these poems, and I'm going to get into that at the end. These don't read as a person talking about their personal experiences or a person talking about even emotions that they themselves have felt. It sounds like he's just saying something just for the sake of it, because he's got 1 million followers and he's going to make money off of this. Here's the last one from him that I'll do for now. Sometimes I want a quiet life. Other times, I want to go a little bit fucking Gatsby. I assume what he means when he says I want to go a little bit Gatsby is that he wants to have this crazy party with dancing and drinking and just flaunting wealth. I thought the point of The Great Gatsby was that having all this excess of wealth and these parties and all this money didn't bring him any happiness. I thought the point was that Gatsby was a deeply unhappy man, and that money didn't fix that. Although maybe I'm reading this wrong. Maybe when he says, I want to go a little bit Gatsby, he means he wants to get shot dead in his own pool. Spoilers, by the way. He wants to get shot dead in his own pool. Or he wants to have his ex-lover run over his current lover with a car. Or something like that. I don't know. My serious criticism for this is that this is a lazy reference. It doesn't really add anything. It's lazy, okay? Here's one that, again, boils my blood. People do not die from suicide. They die from sadness. I almost died reading this. No, they don't. There you go. That's my criticism, is you're wrong, and don't write this. A lot of poets, including Instagram poets like Rupi Kaur, and I can't think of a single other one's name, but I know that she does it, write about very serious topics like trauma and sexual abuse, mental illness, suicide, stuff like that, and that's fine. You know, I think that channeling those things into poetry and into art is a good thing because creative outlets are very therapeutic, but it's just, this is a very dangerous thing to do. I understand that they're talking about depression, but depression is not sadness, and so switching out those words aren't interchangeable. And so we burn, flames on candles, destined to find the bottom of our wick. And yeah, I think this is interesting. It's just, again, that we introduce this metaphor or this allegory and then just kind of say it. And that's okay, but it could be better. And that's what I'm trying to communicate, is just improvement. So I think this is fine. I think it could be better by just doing a little bit more with it. So right now it just kind of spells it out for you. You know, life is like a candle, period. When it could kind of make you think a bit more. These are honestly the best poems I've ever read. When the Kleenex box is empty, don't buy more. Stand up, make some breakfast, run your errands, live your dream, and get a friggin' puppy. What are you talking about? This poem scares me. What are you talking about? What is the correlation between the Kleenex box and the puppy? I don't know what this means. Am I stupid? Am I stupid? Hey Siri, why is it that every time I let someone into my heart, they just hang out and eat all my feelings and leave me all empty inside? Why? Okay, playing Cry Me a River by Justin Timberlake. That sounds like something exactly out of a sitcom, and I love it. When we kiss, you steal gravity from the moon. I am weightless, and I am yours. Oh shit. Oh, so, this one kind of confuses me, because when you steal gravity from the moon doesn't have that much gravity, but it has some. So if you take gravity from the moon back to where you are on Earth, you still have more gravity than you started with. So how are you weightless? This is another subgenre of poetry that I found, which is what I call she poetry. She wasn't looking for a knight. She was looking for a sword. Yeah, I got it. It's not original, but it's cute. She was powerful, not because she wasn't scared, but because she went on so strongly despite this fear. The hardest step she ever took was to blindly trust who she was. She believed in the kind of love you can't buy, the kind of love you read about in books. She didn't want love, she wanted to be loved, and that was entirely different. So the thing about this poetry is that I don't really like it because when I read it, I never get the impression that the she in the poem is actually a real person. I have not read a single one of these poems where I feel like this girl exists. She's just an unnamed, voiceless thing that this man wants to exist. And the issue I have with that is that a lot of them are meant to empower women, a lot of them are meant to show how strong women are, but it's still a male fantasy. They're talking about these strong women, these independent women, but they're not really independent and they're not really strong because they're still based on what these male poets want women to be like. Maybe that's too much for this video. Maybe I'm getting a little too into commentary, but I don't know. I just don't really like it. And for the romantic poems that refer to she instead of you, I just don't think that this third person she is a very strong subject for the poem. Because at least in romance poems, whenever they're writing to a woman, they're usually written in the second person. They're usually written to you, like the poet is writing a letter to her or speaking to her. And whenever you're writing to you, it is kind of implying that that person could respond if they chose. That person is still an active part in the poem, even if they aren't technically speaking and if they aren't writing the poem. Do you know what I mean? If they wanted to, they could interact with the poet because the poet is interacting specifically with them. But whenever you speak in the third person, whenever you talk to she, whenever you're talking about she or he or they, whatever, they don't get to interact with the poem. They're not in the poem really. They're a piece of the poem. They are an object within the poem, not a subject of the poem. I'm gonna do a brief counter-argument against myself on why Instagram poetry isn't that bad. Instagram poetry is very accessible, and the main criticism that absolutely everybody has for poetry is that it's inaccessible, it's hard to understand, and for a long time that was a very valid criticism because poetry was meant to be for the upper class, and so I do agree that making poetry accessible to everybody is great. You know, you don't have to have an English degree to like poetry, to understand poetry, and I think that's really good. But I think that the accessibility of Instagram poetry is also its main fault. Instagram poetry, by definition, is meant for a large audience. It's meant to be put on Instagram for everybody to see. And it's meant to be seen very quickly because people are scrolling through, they're looking at thousands of pictures, and they can't, their eye won't be caught by all of them. And the issue with that is that whenever you make poetry that is relatable and interesting to everybody, it's not really relatable to anyone. So a lot of these poems are very general. They tell you things that you kind of already know about, like being strong and life is hard, but you're better. I almost said you're harder. But the problem with that is that it doesn't really mean anything to any one person. And it doesn't really mean anything to you, the writer. For a while when I was reading Instagram poetry, like when I was going through it to find some for this video, I thought that maybe the biggest problem with Instagram poetry was how short it is. Because there's no room for detail, there's not really any room for creativity or personality. But some of these poems are creative, and some of them do have personality. And a lot of very famous poets wrote short-form poetry, like Emily Dickinson was one of them. Shakespeare wrote his sonnets that were pretty short. Emily Dickinson didn't publish a whole lot of poetry in her life, but after she died, her family or whoever found a lot of her poetry written on scraps of paper and like hidden around the house. And it was very short, but it was also very personal, and it meant a lot to her. She was a very troubled woman and had a lot of issues her entire life, a very sad life. And those poems weren't written for an audience, they were written for herself. And so I think that is the advice that I would give Instagram poets, is that write about yourself, write about what you feel, and other people will enjoy it. Maybe not millions of people, but a lot of people will relate to it, and people who don't relate to it might appreciate it just because you're talking about something that feels real. So my advice to any poets who are watching this video, any writers who are watching this video, art is about subjectivity. No piece of art is going to be liked by every single person in the universe. That's part of it, and that's good, because people have different experiences and different tastes, and that's good. That's something that should be celebrated. Subjectivity is important, and so are you. Write about things that you enjoy. Write about things that you feel. And if other people don't like it, that's okay. Who cares? Anyway, if you liked this video, please leave a like. And if you really, really liked this video, please subscribe. Thank you for watching. And that's all I have to say.